In Creo Parametric, a circular reference happens when one component is both the parent and child of another component. I was working on another video. I pulled up an assembly. Lo and behold, it had a circular reference. Once again, let me show you how to take care of it. And in this video, I'm going to show you two different ways of dealing with it. First, how do you know you have a circular reference? Well, here in the notification center, it tells me I have a circular reference. If you open the notification center, it really doesn't give you any more information, so there's no need to do that. Also, if you take a look at the top node in the model tree, we have a little yellow inverted triangle, or right side up triangle, that also informs us that we have a circular reference in the model. And I take a look at the assembly, and this is not that complicated. You only have essentially 5 different components in here. And before I take care of the circular reference, I want to clean some stuff up. I see that we have a model that is named _skeleton, probably intended to be a skeleton model. If I expand it, yeah, it's got all reference geometry in here. Let's turn this into an actual skeleton. I've shown this in a couple different videos. It is a common misconception that you cannot convert a standard part into a skeleton model. First thing, make sure it is at the top of the model tree. In this case, this is sort of like an old way I've seen people design assemblies, and that's with no default datum. So again, it's already at the top. That condition is satisfied. Then you can right click on the component, and we have this icon to replace the component. And when I go into the replace dialog box, one of the options that we have is to do it by copy. And since it is the first component in the assembly, you have the option to copy as a skeleton. And let's just change the name a little bit over here. I'm happy with this name. Then we can click the OK button. And now this is indeed a skeleton model. You can see it has a different symbol next to it in the model tree. Why do we want to convert that into a skeleton? Well, this way it'll automatically be filtered out of bills of material, especially when you check this into Windchill. It's not going to end up with a WT part depending on your Windchill settings. Also, if there were any solid geometry in that particular part, it would not contribute to the assembly mass properties. Just a little housekeeping. Another thing, I take a look in the model tree and I see this part here called tire, and it's got the same name in brackets next to it. At first I think, oh, this must be an instance of a family table, but when I right click on it, there are no options to open up the generic. This is actually an indication that this is an envelope component. If you go to the Manage Views drop-down menu, here we have Envelope Manager. We can see that we have an envelope in there. Envelopes were a really old technique for large assembly management. You used to be able to substitute by an envelope in order to reduce the amount of detail in an assembly. I can see why they might want to do that with this component. There are a lot of patterned parts inside of here, and they probably wanted a simplified version. But again, this is a technique that was used more back in the 1990s. Computers have gotten faster, and Creo Parametric now has the automatic representation. Envelope parts really aren't necessary. I am going to delete it from the assembly. It says, hey, do you want to confirm to delete the selected envelopes? I will confirm that. Do we want to remove the envelope components? Yes, we do. And so now that envelope part is out of the model tree. And so it's really weird. It's like, hey, how do I have a circular reference in such a simple assembly? And I can almost guess right at the beginning, taking a look at this simple assembly, how they got it, especially since we have a skeleton and a part in here for the rim. Let's take a look at how we would figure out there is a circular reference. Let's right click on the top node in the model tree. Then we can choose Information Reference Viewer. Then if you go to the Paths tab, here we can see in circular paths, there are 3 different circular paths. And then when I click on this, I can see, okay, looks like we've got a copy geometry feature in the wheel rim. And if I click on here, it says, okay, display the circular path which contains this object. And so there is a surface. It refers to a copy geometry feature, which refers to a component. And I've seen this so many times, I can tell you pretty much what it is. They have a copy geometry feature in a part that's used to make geometry, and then they just took things one step too far. After they created the geometry, they went back and added some constraints. That's what I usually see in this particular case. Let's go to circular path number 2. Okay, copy geometry and a datum plane inside of the wheel rim part are involved in this. Again, we can click on the link. Yep, pretty much the same thing, surface copy geometry feature. Let's go to circular path number 3. It's all dealing with the copy geometry feature, some datum plane in the part, and the actual component itself. If you want more information about this, you can, oops, where do I want to do it? I think if you right click on here, you can display full path, and you can see that, okay, here is the loop. Oh, we've got an axis in the copy geometry feature, and it points back to the top level of the assembly. It points to the wheel rim component itself. Let's take a look at the wheel rim part, since we're pretty certain, or we know that this is where we are getting the circular reference. So I will open it in its own separate window, and we see the part. Okay, yep, this is what the part looks like. And oddly enough, it starts off with a surface feature. You can click on it and see what it looks like. Let's go to our layers and make everything visible. There's one layer that is hidden, so let's show it. And we can see, okay, there we have a surface. All right, so not great. I usually don't like this. Looks like they copied and pasted a surface from another model. If I go to information reference viewer, oh wait, lo and behold, that model that is the source for the surface is missing, but oh well. Then I see here, okay, the very next feature is a copy geometry feature. Then we have some different datum planes in here. So we take a look at the copy geometry feature. I can go to information reference viewer, and all right, so there is a reference to an axis in this quick one part. All right, A2 axis in quick1.prt, huh? Let me hop back over to the assembly. What the heck was that? Okay, quick1.prt, it references an axis in the quick one part. Let me click the open button and then open over here. There's an A2 axis. Let me turn on my axis display. All right, so it's just some axis out over here, sort of like in the center of, I don't know, looks like this is supposed to represent a recurring pattern of tread in the tire. All right, whatever. And then it's like, wait, this copy geometry feature, what's actually in this copy geometry feature? Let's edit definition, and I'll go to the references tab. Everything is grayed out because in order to edit the definition, I need to be in the assembly in which the copy geometry feature was created. But I just want to figure out what is in this copy geometry feature. All right, we see the reference model. Here we see surface sets, no items under bodies. And again, this was probably made back in the 1990s. If I really cared to figure out when it was made, I could use model check to do that. Okay, there are no curves in here. The only reference is a single datum axis. There's a copy geometry feature that only contains a datum axis. This is nutty. This is completely unnecessary. But what I'm guessing is that they reference this axis and then they use the axis to assemble the component in the assembly, hence the circular reference. But again, a copy geometry feature that just contains a single axis is 99.999% of the time unnecessary. It just defines the center axis of this particular part. you could have used a local feature. And in the second method for how to deal with this circular reference, I will actually do that. Let's hop over to, let's see, here is the assembly. We have all our different axes visible. Let me collapse the pattern of parts inside of here. And so they used the axis probably to assemble this component. Let's take a look at that. Let's click on the component and then edit definition. And we see, lo and behold, yep, there is a coincident constraint between the A2 axis in the copy geometry feature and the wheel rim parts and the A2 axis in the part quick. So in other words, it's assembled to what it's copied, or the copy is assembled to its original source. Again, this is how people screw up. They go one step too far. They create the part probably in the default location, and then they edit to definition in order to assemble it using real constraints. To take care of it, the easy way is just to delete the existing constraints in the model and change to the default constraint. And here it says fully constrained. For some reason, the part's not changing color, but that doesn't matter. So now we have edited definition. Let me now hit the regenerate button. Hey, lo and behold, we no longer have a warning in the notification center. We no longer have the little triangle next to the top node in the model tree. If we right click and go to information reference viewer, then go to the paths tab, find circular paths, no circular references, just changing that component's constraints back to the default constraint ended up taking care of the circular references, and it ended up with 3 circular references, but that took care of all of them. Let me hide that surface feature so we no longer get stippling in the graphics area. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Here's what I would actually do. This copy geometry feature bothers me. Why do we have this copy geometry feature in the model? Let's get rid of that copy geometry feature. Let's open up the part in its own separate window. And if we try to delete this feature, let me right click and choose delete. Hey, it's going to delete the whole entire model tree. So this gives me the opportunity to show you a few other different techniques for getting rid of these references and this unnecessary chain. All right, so oops, I accidentally deleted everything. Let's use our friend undo to bring everything back. What I want to do is break the relationship between the copy geometry feature and everything after it in the model tree. And this actually allows me to show you 3 different commands I don't think I've ever shown in another video. First thing I want to do is get some datum geometry, some defaults in here. If I go to the datum drop-down menu, here we have the command to create a default coordinate system. Hey, that is great, and it ends up at the bottom of the model tree. Let's drag it up, and because of the copied surface, the highest we can drag it is to be the second feature. Let's also create some default datum planes. And let me turn on my axis display and my plane display. So it looks like, you know, they created substitutes for the datum geometry, but the problem is that, let's see, this DTM1, if I take a look at its parent-child information, let's go to the reference viewer. Yeah, it refers to the copy geometry feature, so I can't use these as default datum planes. It won't let me, drag it up above the copy geometry feature. I can drag it inside, but I can't drag it above. So if you want to create some default datum planes, once again, you can go to the datum drop-down menu and choose offset planes, and you can specify an offset in the X direction. Let's use a value of 0. Offset in the Y direction, let's use a value of 0, and offset 0. So in other words, we have 3 planes created that we could use as our default datums. I'm going to use the shift key to select all of them so I can drag them to be right below the copy geometry feature. And let's see, let's go to this plane. I'm going to rename it. Let's call it front. I'm a big fan of renaming datums. This one we can call top, and this one we can call right. And again, this copy geometry feature, let me turn off the plane display for a moment. The copy geometry feature, if I select it in the model tree, really only defines that center axis. Let me turn my plane display back on and hide some of these datums. I can get an axis there if I create an axis at the intersection of the planes top and right. So let's do that. Let's select top, hold down the control key, let's select right, and from the mini toolbar we have the axis icon. Since I had enough references selected, it was created in the model. Here it is at the bottom of the model tree. Let's drag it up to be above the copy geometry feature. Let me rename this to be called the center axis. And now what I want to do is change everything that refers to this copy geometry feature so it refers to this native local axis. And if I want to do that, well, one way that you can do that is figuring out all the different features that refer to this part, this copy geometry feature, and then edit references. So for example, if I right click on it, information, reference viewer, we can see, okay, DTM1, DTM2, protrusion, blah, 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 cut, blah, blah, blah. Essentially all the different features in here refer to that copy geometry feature. So you could start by saying, okay, DTM1, you can use the edit references command, and we can see, okay, instead of referring to the A2 axis, we could pick this new center axis. But this will be pretty tedious if I have to go through that long list of features in order to edit references. The easier way, if you go to the operations menu, there is a command called replace references. So instead of edit references, which allows you to change the references for a particular feature, replace references allows us to transfer all the references from one entity or feature to another one. So if I select the copy geometry feature and then go to operations, replace references, we get this nice dialog box, and it says, okay, the reference from the copy geometry feature, it's got this A2 axis that's used by all these different features inside of here. And then you can pick a new reference. The new reference collector is active. Let's select the center axis, and then we can click the OK button. And so right now it's transferring everything that referred to copy geometry ID 73 to center axis. And now if I right click on the copy geometry feature, I can choose the delete command. And this time we don't get all the other features in the model highlighted. It's just got this copy geometry feature listed in here. I can click the OK button. And hey, I've made this model better by getting rid of that unnecessary copy geometry feature, which only grabbed one single axis. And now, if I wanted to, I could go back to that assembly. Whoa, way too cluttered in here. Let's turn off the display of the datums. If you really wanted to assemble this component using the center axis here and the axis A2 in the quick one part, you could do that if you want. However, really, if you've got a skeleton model, it should be assembled to the skeleton. Hey, it looks like there's probably an A2 axis inside of that part. Yep, and it's located at the center. So I could assemble the wheel part to the skeleton model. But there probably really isn't any need to do that. I can just leave it in the default constraint. But just to wrap up, hey, if you've got circular references, you could use the reference viewer in order to figure out where they are. If you have a component that has a copy geometry feature and then uses real constraints, you can usually just delete the constraints and use the default constraint. And in this particular part, I used a couple commands like default coordinate system and offset planes to create some new references, as well as the replace references command to transfer all the children of a particular entity to a new entity that was a local reference. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindshield.com. If you learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.